What is good, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us once again, folks, on another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. And it is bright and sunny here in Bellingham, Washington. Finally, feels like summer is finally here. I mean, it's still not that hot. All of this week is going to be like mid-60s, which is kind of a bummer.
Mid-60s? Really?
Yeah. And then last week it spiked up to mid-80s.
Yeah.
Portland, we're going to Portland. So that might be a little steamy. Portland's always a little more warmer than us up here. But that being said, it doesn't stop us from drinking hot batch brew coffee. I don't know about you guys, but I drink hot coffee year round. 80-degree weather, 70-degree weather, maybe 90. Above 100, I don't want to be there.
When I was in Indo, we still drank hot coffee.
That's right. When I was in India,
hot tea, right?
it was 100% humidity. Mid 80s, low 90s, and hot tea with a biscuit. And the biscuit, they mean cracker.
Yes.
And by cracker, they mean like a cookie, like a Biscoff. Oh, the aromas are nice.
I think it's extracted okay.
Yeah.
Not the best.
Just slightly under. You could probably push it a little.
Slightly, yeah.
Get a little more oomph out of it.
I mean, it's tasty coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when coffees are
Mouth-watering.
are that intense, it's almost hard to screw it up.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get something out of any kind of brew, right?
Right. So it's giving me lots of like Jolly Rancher vibes. Jolly Rancher. Maybe fruity's the wrong word. It's like a candied, like cotton candy.
Yeah. It has a very like soft acidity.
Very nice mouthfeel.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, very juicy. I mean, this coffee
Just
makes
pleasant
sense. It is what it is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? This is the good
What's the coffee?
Salma Bermudez.
Salma
from
Bermudez.
Manhattan.
Nice. A geisha. Interesting. What is an anaerobic natural or?
I believe
Thermal
this
shock?
is is it a double fermentation? No. I
Oh,
don't know.
God.
It is some kind of natural. That's for sure. But it's pretty clean.
Yeah. It's I mean, fruity. Not, I mean, once again, I don't know if I'd say fruity, but like candied sweetness. It's big. What I really like is that like the mouth-watering experience where you're drinking it and you're like, ooh, like you're salivating almost.
Yeah.
It's just so nice to have it in coffee, which is juicy and like juicy's like what I'd call it.
That's
so
it. Yeah.
it's pretty nice.
Nice coffee. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Well, this is going to be a pleasant little beverage to sip on as we talk about what we're going to be talking about. I don't even know if I can like throw a title on here. I'm going to have to think about that as I post it and see what happens in this episode, you know? And so this podcast this conversation was born out of conversation that you and I were having as we were filming a video. Give us some insight. What was going on?
Filming that Ethos video was interesting because I think I planned it out. Like I had a quote unquote bulleted script. But you know how all videos go. It's like you have a plan, but then the camera gets in front of you and you kind of, not necessarily lose what you want to say, but it gets a little more challenging.
It's a lot harder to be in front of camera than people think.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like I do public speaking, and for me, it's almost more refreshing to be in front of a big group of people than a camera. I don't understand why it's
intimidating.
weird.
Yeah, it's like the black eye, like the whole, like the lens.
Like, what's going on?
It's spooky.
Who's there?
Yeah. It's like the black hole.
But I think you ask a question, and then we've also talked about this question during a literal warm-up session. And and the question like goes something along the lines of like, what would happen? What would it mean for us if Mirror failed? And I think that's a very heavy question. That's a heavy question for us as owners.
Yeah.
But also that's like a heavy question for anyone owning a business or a passion, or like, you know what I mean? Sometimes things happen in life and then all of a sudden you can't do what you're passionate about doing. Like, you know, for a minute even, I was thinking when I had shingles, like when it exploded and I was having a hard time tamping, I had to like think through the process, like what would I do if I couldn't tamp with my right hand anymore? Like, could I actually do it with my left? Or, you know what I mean? What would I have to quit coffee? It's like, I mean, even like, well, what if you lose your taste? You can't dial in. So there's like those they're kind of dark questions, heavy questions, but they're real questions to ask. And I don't remember exactly how I answered the question when you asked me, but I think one of the things that I said was along the lines of, the reality is like, Mirror's not allowed to fail. Because the reality is there's like no other option. Like there's this sense of urgency. It's like, we have to succeed. But that's like one side of the coin, for me at least. That's like one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is like, well, the vision and what I believe like Mirror is going to accomplish is much bigger than like our location in Bellingham, right?
And then roasting.
Yeah.
This during this whole season here in the last 2 years, when this thing was floating around and making people lose their taste, that was a spooky thing for me, because I've heard of friends of friends', like family members, that lost taste up to like 6 months.
Oh, that's insane. Ooh.
And I'm like, and there was a period like a week or two where I kind of was losing some of it as well. I think I could even cup when we were buying green. Right. That was very challenging. And I wasn't necessarily sick with it. It was more of like a nasal like congestion that was happening, where I literally, the solution was I stuck like some like essential oils in my nose, and then literally woke up the next day and I'm like, wow, I can taste something. And it all went away. But that was a really big like thought, was like, oh shoot, if this actually lasts, what am I gonna do? You know, this is detrimental to you can't roast if you're
if you can't cup.
If you can't cup or taste, you know, said by the great Mark Michelson, who said you're only as good of a roaster as you are, you know, a cupper or a taster. And so that was a really big kind of like reality check into see like what would happen. I think what you said, like Mirror is not allowed to fail, and talking about how the coffee roasting company has this urgency to accomplish what it set out to accomplish. And just to give some context, we're not talking about like Mirror has to fail as in like financially we have to make it or else we die. Yep. The reality is, if Mirror fails, we'll go on to the next thing. You'll get a job. I'll go get a job. I'll go do this, do the X, Y, and Z. And the reality is, actually, a lot of founders, and if you listen to the stories of a lot of founders, the scary thing that's really consistent through all of them is that all of them have failed at least once. And sometimes they're like 3-4 businesses deep until that one hits off. Right. And then they're like, they make it. But the first 3-4 businesses, nobody knows about them. They're nobodies. They're just working away, grinding away, and failure after failure, and then it takes off. And so the reality is we'd make it, you know, around. But what cannot fail is really this task that we're set out to do, which is part of our mission and vision. And that's why the conversation came up during the ethos videos, because we're rethinking, like, why are we even doing this? What's so important? And I think when I asked you, like, what would happen if Mirror fails? What's at stake? When I first asked that, it was just kind of like a passing thought. And then like days after we shot the video and asked that, I was like, wait, no, that actually made me feel a little like unsettled. Yeah. Because I'm like, what's at stake here? Like, why is Mirror's success even important to the world, not myself? I know for me, it would be great, you know, I could run a coffee roasting company, which is fun, all this stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like, what's important, what's the contribution that it's making, and that challenged that challenged what I thought our the vision and mission statement of our company. That challenged it, but then that also put some weight onto it and made you realize, like, oh no, like, Mark, you should have some urgency, because if you fail, like, this mission and vision may not come to pass. Mm-hmm. Like, you have the ability to change and to make an impact in this world. And that impact, like, it can actually impact people's lives.
Right.
I don't know how else to say it.
Right?
Yeah.
It should.
Yeah, it should. And so, and coming from like a place of, like, I want to actually help people. I want to serve people. I want to impact and benefit people's lives and leave the world better than the way I came into this world. That to me is like, you can't fail.
Yeah.
This needs to happen.
Yeah. And that's like the classic cliches that we've heard about, like people over profit and all of those things. Mm-hmm. That's where they stem from, is this idea you should be focused on something bigger than just personal gain. You know what I mean? And that's why, like, if Mir failed, like, there could potentially be some, like, there would be, like, bigger quote unquote issues in the world if we weren't part of the solution. Mm-hmm. Because everyone being part of the solution plays into, like, a grander, much broader solution to global issues, right?
Right.
So yes, you can't underestimate, like, the cheesy saying of small beginnings, but you also have to realize that anything that you start always starts as a seed, and it grows to be big. I mean, you continuing with that example is like, when a seed grows into a big acorn tree, it provides shelter, provides protection, it provides safety, it provides food source. You know what I mean? It provides a lot for whoever is, like, inhabiting that tree.
And it actually provides also the seeds for
future growth. Right. So, like, imagine that. So, but it always starts with some small idea, with some small passion, with a small seed. And that's why, like, that seed can't fail. Because if that seed fails, the whole tree failed. The future of that tree failed. Right. That's why there's this, like, the grandeur of, like, having this massive vision, this broad vision, but then also the focus of, like, the day-to-day urgency of accomplishing that vision.
Right. Yeah. And, the thing that I'm thinking about right now is, like, how much of this plays into our Enneagram 1?
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Probably big.
That was the only thing that was like, as you're talking, I'm like, oh gosh, this sounds so cliche for us. Yeah, like, and the Enneagram 1 is like, sometimes it's called the perfectionist, sometimes it's called the reformer.
Yeah.
Which is like, you're fighting for the right thing to be done. You're pursuing some kind of change, and you want to impact the world for the better, and you want to make the world better. So now that I'm thinking about this, I'm like, oh, this makes actually 100% sense, and we're both ones.
Yeah. I mean, but that's also part of the truth, right? The fact is, like,
and then your grum's like, well, duh, yeah, we are the truth.
I mean, the reality is, like, our, like, values and our visions come out of our values.
Yes.
And within that, like, everyone has a set of values.
Right.
So so to a degree, everyone has some kind of vision for something to happen in the world.
Right. And it's not the same for everybody.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. But for us, we started with this kind of concept of, impacting coffee farming, impacting coffee, on the global scale, us being aware, like, the coffee industry is not perfect. There are things that need to be changed to make this a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but maybe equitable. I don't know if that's the word, but a little bit more fair, a little bit more just beneficial for everybody, rather than, somebody's taking advantage of somebody else, and a little bit more relational rather than transactional. And so we started with that kind of a concept, realizing, oh wait, there's something at hand. And actually happens to fall in line with our passion of coffee
Right.
and what we really like to do. And so I think Micah said this on the podcast. He said, I never realized that my passion and what I wanted to see in the world can intersect. And to me, that hit deep, because I'm like, oh no, that's exactly why Mirror makes sense. And that's exactly why I want to succeed. I want to go out of my way, put all my energy, blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, is because what I'm seeing in the future is, coffee farmers being valued, being cherished, building relationships, being known by people here, telling their stories, reflecting their abilities, their skill sets, their families, their villages, paying homage to them and building relationships that are good for them, good for us, and good for the coffee drinker, because hopefully, the coffee tastes better at the end of the day. And so for me, when I see that future, and all that's like a very broad way of saying it, but all the details that I'm seeing of how much impact this can make and the good that it can bring into the world, which the point is reflect what's good.
Right.
I'm like, oh no, this has to happen. And I want to see it happen. And I don't want to wait for anybody else to do it.
Yeah. And I think part of the idea of reflecting is the fact that we also want to be an example. Like, we want to be a source of inspiration. It's like, we understand that we're not the saviors of the world. We're not the saviors of coffee farmers. Like, we're not that. But we also believe in the idea of reflection. That's why I think for us, the key word is reflection. It's like actually very profound. The more we do this mirror thing, like the more I think and meditate on the word reflection, the more dynamic this vision of mirror grows. Because it would have been weird if we, chose a different word. And I don't think there's a better word than reflection, because what we're doing is we're literally taking the concept of, let's just even focus in on farmers, but taking the concept of, we see the hard work of coffee producers. Yeah. We see that. But we also have experiences that we've been in where not everyone, or people don't all see the same hard work of farmers.
Right.
So it's not that we're like, oh, we want to be the main, star of the show. Yeah. What we want to see happen is literally saying, hey, this good coffee, yes, it's roasted well. We'll admit to that. But I mean, if it wasn't roasted well, it wouldn't be in a bag, right? Oh, God, so to a degree, we believe our coffee is roasted well. So we take ownership over that. But we're also saying, like, you know what? We didn't produce that coffee. Yeah. Like, what we did is a lot of work, and then the roasting process is anywhere from 19 to 15 minutes. That's not a lot of time, right? But it is a lot of work.
You say 19 to 15?
Or 9. Did I say 19? 9 to 15, not backwards. What am I talking about, y'all? But my point is we see how much work goes in on the back end, and we want everyone to see that. And hopefully when we reflect that, it inspires maybe someone else either to become a coffee producer, or it might inspire someone to be a barista, or a coffee business owner.
And I think, speaking of that inspiration, or the fact that, some of you might relate to this, is that when you drink like a really good coffee, like this Salma Bermudez, you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And it inspires this awe and this drive of like, this is excellent, this is beautiful. And it actually, I think, at least for me, inspires me like, dude, this is a craft. This is what happens when you perfect things, when you work on things, when you put in the hard work, when you strategize and do all the little details that lead up to this. This inspires me and be like, man, I want to add more of this kind of stuff into the world.
For sure.
Well, I want to add that in there. And I'm glad you brought up that thing. Like, we're not trying to save the world, or we're also not perfect at all, by all means. And we're not going to do everything perfectly. But what we are set out to do is, how can we just take one step at a time and do our best to reflect what's good? Yep. Do our best to make, a positive impact, which is where kind of Mir started off with. And that's why it's so valuable for us, not to fail. Even though I think you brought up a good conversation before the podcast of like, if we don't do it, chances are somebody else will.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will bring, that same drive to this situation, and it's not going to be the end of the world. At some point, somebody's going to bring some kind of solution. Mm-hmm. But the key here is that like, I want to be part of that. Yeah. I don't want to wait for anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to just sit around and say, oh man, I wish. And that was actually, I don't know if I've told you this, but that was actually one of the things like starting Mir when, Primer went out of business, the cafe that I worked at. And I was like, man, we've talked about this for so long. For years, we've talked about starting some kind of coffee company. I never thought it was going to be roasting, but we've talked about it for so long. I'm like, why am I just going to wait?
Yeah, totally.
Like, I'd much rather give it a shot. And if it fails, then I want to know I've at least tried.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that's super good. I mean, to a degree, I'm like, you wrap that up so well. We could literally just stop recording right now. But within that, like, I also, similar concept for me, it was like looking at this vision and it being so big. I realized like my place in that vision, and realizing that I am limited. Like, I can only do so much.
Yeah.
This vision isn't limited to the Sergi concept.
Yeah.
Like, this vision isn't as unique as just one person. This vision is extremely dynamic. But I don't want to settle for the fact of like, oh, this is too big, I'm just not going to try, like you said. Like, I want to keep going forward and saying, what can I bring to accomplish this mission and vision statement?
Yeah.
Like, you and I always we talk so much about the idea of storytelling. Storytelling is not a new concept.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't invent storytelling.
Right.
But we have this drive and passion to believe and to like anchor our business in the fact that storytelling makes a big impact in the long run when it comes to what happens in the world. Like, storytelling forms culture. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And we may not have the biggest winning documentary,
right,
but we'll have a documentary that's going to be impactful.
Right.
We don't know what the impact is going to be,
right,
but it'll be impactful. That's a given.
Right. And storytelling also is not narrowed down to just videos, even though we love shooting them.
Right.
It could be photos. It could be, a painting. It could be the bag design.
Yes.
It could be the podcast, this podcast.
Exactly.
And so, to also add that is, if we really want to take a step back even more and look at things from a little of a broader perspective, you're right. Mir cannot fail. This is the ethos. This is literally what I'm willing to, die on a hill for. But if something happens where it does fail, this vision and mission will probably stay the same because it's baked into me. Yeah. As part of the DNA of my body, of my mind. This is who I am as a person. And at the end of the day, if it's not through Mir, I'm probably going to find a way to do it through, being a janitor.
Yeah, exactly.
Or somewhere else, wherever my passion leads me. Whether, I get passionate about making films or, doing something else, but it's so much bigger, and it's more about finding, kind of, I don't want to sound cliche and say finding your purpose, but it's more, it's very internal and very personal. And so even if Mir fails, there's a bigger thing at work here.
Yeah. You when we were prepping, you said the thing like, what does this mean for skateboarders? And I think that was genius, because it automatically took my thought to thinking, okay, yeah, what does this mean? What does a vision and mission look for like this for Tony Hawk, right?
Yeah.
And we all know Tony Hawk won the X Games, right? But that's not it for Tony Hawk. He did so much more. I mean, the side fact, like, Tony Hawk impacted our lives just through the freaking video game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It brought joy to our lives.
Yeah.
That was impactful. That's part of a bigger vision. I mean, Tony Hawk is also a philanthropist. Like, he started basically creating skate parks for people who don't have access to skate parks.
Right.
That's impactful.
Right.
So that's bigger than the X Games. But he also had to win the X Games to have that impact.
Yeah.
So it's not like this or that. It's both. It's way more encompassing.
Yeah. And really, I think there's something unique about the fact that Tony Hawk didn't just retire with, an insane amount of money and go live on some island. And not to say that that's necessarily bad, but I respect Tony Hawk for saying, oh, wait, I can't skate anymore, but I can do something else. I have resources. I have opportunities now that can let me leverage my life in a way that can be beneficial and impactful for somebody else. At the end of the day, I know we're talking about within the context of a business, but this can go even something so much bigger. Like you yourself, you can have a mission or a vision for your life. You can have a goal that you're set out to accomplish, and it doesn't have to be something really grand and massive. It could just be, hey, I just want to, raise a family.
Yeah.
I just want to, take a seat on the board of the city hall, or whatever, and, speak up for the right things in my city or, whatever that is. But I think there's something powerful in that goes above the monetary, above just being, I just want to be filthy rich. It's like something a little bit more that is just personal and real.
Totally. Yeah, that's very well said. I mean, I'm thinking about the dynamic and how many different people listen to the podcast. And there's probably some folks who listen who are just like, well, I don't want to start a business. Like, do I, what does it mean for me if I don't? And I would say like, well, you probably work for a business or you work for some kind of organization. And what you do for that organization has to have like purpose or vision and mission. Yeah. And when you execute that, like to the utmost, possibility of that vision and purpose, you're actually playing a role in the bigger picture of whether it's the brand, the companies, or the institution's vision and mission. So this conversation is also for you. I don't think there's a single person that is excluded from this conversation of, vision, mission and vision.
For sure. And I actually think that, this isn't like what we're set out to do is not possible for just you and I.
Yeah.
Like we actually need more people to join in with our vision and mission, and they're just as important as we are in this thing.
Yeah.
That, it doesn't make us necessarily any way better on a pedestal, where it's more like we're actually working at this together. And I listen to podcasts, kind of business stuff from entrepreneurs and stuff. And it's really interesting to see, some of these people just say like, the real MVPs are all the people that work for me. They're more talented, they're more gifted, they're more skilled, and they're the ones that are driving this whole thing forward. And it's not possible without them. So where you are right now working, you're part of a bigger mission and vision. And I hope you know that. And maybe you need to, move to another job or work for somebody else that aligns with more of your mission and vision, so you can feel like you're actually a part of something bigger, because you are, your time and your resources and your energy and your skill set is actually important to accomplishing bigger things and actually making this world a little better.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have ran into a lot of like situations and issues throughout the last couple of years. And one of those things we've always said, like, man, I wish there was someone who would just start a printing company that would just print coffee bags.
Oh,
like,
man.
That's it. Like, I wish there was someone in Bellingham who said, my vision and mission statement is to support roasters with proper coffee bag labels.
That is so
that would
true. Wow.
radically impact our business.
I did not see that coming, but that is so true. And something as simple as that makes our life easier and empowers us to keep doing what we're doing. So, wow. So great.
Take a twist.
I'm so glad you threw that in there. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for making it this far in the episode. Hopefully, you're coming away feeling a little bit more inspired and encouraged that you're part of something a little bigger than yourself. And yeah, I don't know. Final thoughts?
Tasty batch.
There it is, folks. Some tasty batch. And remember, reflect what's good, y'all. We'll see you guys later.